Nikki Haley is in Iowa this week, making stops at several campaign and fundraising events. The former UN ambassador and Republican governor from South Carolina told the Quad City Times, quote, "If we," by that I think she means Republicans, "don't win 2022, there's no 2024. Her appearance is inevitably raising questions about whether or not Nikki Haley might launch a bid for the White House. Now, she has said previously she would not do this if former President Trump decided to run again. For more on all of this, I'm joined by Joel Payne and Kevin Sheridan. Joel is a CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist. Kevin is a Republican strategist and former communications director for former House Speaker Paul Ryan. Joel, let me start with you. So, Iowa, that puts you on a list. If you're a Republican, might you run for president or not? So, break that down. And also, again, the questions about President Biden running for reelection. If so, what's he running on? Break it down.
Well, look, Nikki Haley joins the exclusive club of people who look in the mirror every morning and see a president, right? So I'm sure she will not be the last. And there will be many folks going through the cornfields of Iowa. Look, I think the footsteps of 2024 are upon us. They're coming up. I think the second part of your question is about President Biden. And Major, I was on with you about 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And I think what I said then, and I'm going to say the same thing now, the answer is yes until it's no. President Biden is going to run for reelection until it's no. And I guess the way I kind of square that answer is there is no way that the answer is maybe or any kind of waffle until it's absolutely no. If the president decided to make that decision, it would change the entire political prospects of the Democratic Party. Vice President Harris would become the front runner, but it would also unleash the gates of others in the party who would be interested in running. All those things are on hold right now because President Biden has declared and has said that he is making all intentions to run. I will say, the more the president kind of dithers and struggles, I think the more those whispers become louder and louder.
So, Kevin, Nikki Haley is someone who would be on a list of Republicans with a quote-unquote complicated relationship with former President Trump. As you know, and as I know, she served as UN ambassador in his administration, but also said Trump, quote, let us down after January 6th. Those are her words, not mine. What do you think her prospects are and the likelihood she might, in fact, throw her hat into the ring?
Yeah, it seems that a lot of potential candidates are going to throw their hat into the ring and not worry about the wrath of Trump. I see, a pretty full field, actually. I think, we'll see if she can get momentum. She's out there campaigning for House and Senate candidates now. Her profile as governor of South Carolina is one that was very good, and she's an attractive candidate in a lot of ways. She's got the foreign policy chops. She can lean in on that. We've obviously got a mess around the world. We'll just see if she actually does it. I think the most interesting person, probably, I think there are three names. Obviously, there's Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, and if Chris Christie gets in. I think if Christie gets in, I don't know that what his chances are. We'll have to see. But if he gets on a debate stage with Donald Trump, his friend, and he goes after him like he did with Marco Rubio in 2016, I think that could really complicate things. And Ron DeSantis is polling really well right now. He's polling above Trump in New Hampshire. So I'm sure he's looking at that.
So, Kevin, you said you think a lot of Republicans are going to jump in. Do you detect that something has happened with these very internal calculations, both in terms of what former President Trump and his wrath might or might not be in a presidential run, or what other Republicans who write checks, who would back Republicans not named Trump, have changed in their thinking about this, let's just say in the last 60 or 90 days?
Yeah, and he's got this strong base of support, but you see cracks in it, and you see a hunger to get beyond a candidate who might only be focused on his own, 2020 race, and that's not where the majority of Republicans are in this country right now, with inflation out of control and gas and groceries you can't buy, and shortages everywhere, foreign policy messes around the world. A successful candidate this run is going to have to talk about the current day issues. People's lives are getting worse by the day, and they're going to have to address that. And if you have a candidate who's focused on himself and 2020, That's not an attractive message. He had a better message in 2016. That's why he beat Hillary Clinton. He was change, and she was she was old and he was new, and it won. 2020 was different, but he can't be focused on that. And if he can't get beyond that, I think the party moves beyond him.
Joel, Kevin has said, for the purposes of our conversation, the magic 2 words, Hillary Clinton. So after Roe versus Wade was overturned, as she predicted, there is a report today of a possible 3rd bid by Hillary Clinton to be the next president of the United States. Possibilities there, or kind of rehashing a story that simply, for better or worse, won't go away?
Yeah, I doubt that. And look, as you know, Major, I worked for Hillary Clinton in 2016. I actually considered it to be one of my career highlights to help that woman try to break that glass ceiling. I don't believe that she's likely to run. I think anyone, we're having an interesting conversation here about a number of people who are thinking about running, who are already running, et cetera. And as with anything, I just think you have to have a rationale and a reason why the country it needs you, why the moment calls on you and your unique brand of leadership. And so whenever I kind of hear people's names speculated, and look, there are many talented people on both sides of the aisle in politics. What's your rationale? What's your case for running? If you can answer that, go for it. If you can't answer that question, you're going to have a hard time getting past the first cornfield in Iowa or the first snowstorm in New Hampshire. So as long as there's a rationale, I'm all for it. I don't know if there's a rationale for Hillary Clinton to run when there is a Democratic president in office and there's a deep bench of Democrats who could potentially succeed him, who stand right behind him.
So, Kevin, as you well know, and as the nation has been digesting for months upon months, President Biden's approval ratings right around the mid to low 40s. And he struggled to get traction on lots of issues. Now there's a razor-thin majority in the Senate, it's a pretty narrow majority in the House. And Republicans, because this is what the opposition party does, heap criticism on them. But do Republicans, from your vantage point, need to have something that they're actually for in the midterms, or is no, heck no, enough?
Yeah, it's a target-rich environment, so they need to hone their message and stick to the biggest issues that are affecting everybody, and that's inflation. That's they've got to get in there with a strong energy plan to drill more, to open up the federal leases, to build more nuclear capacity. They've got to do all of it because energy is crushing this country right now, and the lack of it. And they need to focus on inflation. They need to focus on holding this administration accountable. I think a true wave is coming, and I think everybody can kind of feel it. And when a real true wave hits, it takes out candidates that you'd never think would lose. And we saw that in '94, and we've seen it over and over again. And we'll see. But it really feels like one of those years where it's going to be a really big wave.
So, Kevin, I'm glad you said that because it opens the door for me to put you on the spot. Define the magnitude of a wave. Give me a number. Is it 30 plus? And throw out at least one name that you think, God, you just said it. We would never think about that, but you think someone who could be jeopardized by a wave of significant magnitude.
I mean, I've always been I'm on the higher side. I think we're looking at 50 or plus seats in the House.
50 or more House seats.
Yeah, I think the Senate will flip, even though we're doing everything we can to kind of screw up our nominees there. I think you'll see Republican governors do really, really well. I don't know if I have a name, but we've seen it in the biggest wave years. You see leadership get knocked out. You see somebody, maybe it's not Pelosi because that's a tough district for any Republican to seriously win, but you saw it in New Jersey. Phil Murphy barely won, and the Senate leader lost. And when do you see that in New Jersey? So somebody's going down. It's somebody probably high up in leadership that we would never even think had a race. All
right, Joel, that's a big one over the home plate for you. I want you to take a swing at it and tell the audience why Kevin is hyper optimistic.
Well, look, Kevin and I come from we're from the same fraternity of former Hill staffers, so I'll be kind to him. I would be more than happy if he and his Republican colleagues thought that 50 was the target. That would certainly be a wave. I think looking at redistricting, looking at the nature of politics right now, I think that number is dwindling by the day. I think the House is pretty much settled. Republicans are very likely going to take over the House. I think the Senate is where it gets interesting because you know what, Major? This reminds me of 2010. And I was in Majority Leader Harry Reid's office in 2010. Republicans had an opportunity. They had some public support behind them with the Tea Party movement, and they had bad candidates all over the country. And I see bad candidates in the Senate all over the country for Republicans. I would not want to be running as a Republican with people like Herschel Walker, the things that he's saying in an environment in Georgia where you've got a strong Republican governor. And I think he might drag Republicans down in that state. Other places around the country where Republicans are not looking as strong as they should because these Trump influence-inspired candidates are dragging the power of the Republican brand down at a time where the wind's at their back. So look, I'm certainly not bullish as a Democrat with a bad economy and a glaze hanging over the American people right now of negativity. But I will say Republican extremism is our best friend right now. Republicans from the Supreme Court all the way down to dog catcher candidates for office, their extremism is the best friend of a Democrat that's running for office right now.
Kevin, you alluded to it, but I just want to give you a chance to respond. You said that Republicans might be messing things up on the Senate side. Joel just described what he sees. I know you don't see it exactly that way, but what did you mean by that?
Well, Joel hinted at it. Yeah, we got some tough candidates. We'll see if they can overcome some of their more controversial, statements, some of the positions they've taken, their backgrounds. We'll see if it's that friendly of an environment, or if people who've leaned in on January 6th too much, or said the election was stolen in 2020, those candidates might get swept in. And so I know Democrats are putting a lot of money behind trying to get the most beatable candidate that in their minds. But some of those guys might actually get swept in. So be careful what you wish for. And we'll see. It's a big wave coming though.
Very good. Joel Payne, Kevin Sheridan, thanks for your time.